If you've been following along, you know we covered 3i Atlas back when it first appeared this summer. That interstellar comet from another star system blazing through our neighborhood at about 153,000 miles per hour. Well, everyone, it's time for an update because something interesting happened last week that I just can't stop thinking about. NASA held a press conference. They released images from the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter that they had been holding for about 45 days during the government shutdown. And the NASA spokesperson opened with this: I would like to address the rumors right at the beginning. The object is a comet. It looks and behaves like a comet, and all the evidence points to it being a comet. He said comet so many times it started feeling like this is completely defensive. Like they were trying really hard to close the door on something. And meanwhile, there's a new documentary claiming that the government's been lying about alien contact for about 80 years. So today's question isn't what flew through our solar system. It's why does NASA sound like they're trying to convince us of something? And can we trust what we're being told? Let's get into it. Welcome back to Thriving in Ambiguity, where we break down the complexities of technology, ideally without losing our minds. I'm Steve Mancini, and on November 19th, NASA held a live press conference at Goddard Space Flight Center. The stated purpose: to share new imagery of 3i Atlas. The reality, it felt way more like damage control. Here's what happened. The HiRISE camera aboard the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter captured images of 3i Atlas on October 2nd when it passed within 19 million miles of Mars. That's the closest view any spacecraft got of this object. Spatial resolution, roughly 30 kilometers per pixel, which should have been huge news, right? But then the government shut down. For 45 days, NASA held these images. No release, no data, just silence. Harvard astrophysicist Avi Loeb, who we talked about in the past, he was furious. He wrote open letters asking NASA to release the data. Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna even tweeted about it, saying scientific knowledge shouldn't be held hostage by politics. And finally, on November 19th, NASA announced a press conference. Expectations were sky high. People thought we're finally going to see something definitive. And then NASA showed us a fuzzy white blob. The image quality was unfortunately degraded. The spacecraft experienced what is called jitter during the observation. The comet was in motion, and it resulted in basically a blurry dot surrounded by a fuzzy cloud. But here's the thing, and this is what Loeb pointed out immediately. NASA didn't focus on the mysteries. They focused on dismissing them. From the opening statement, they went straight to, this is a comet. It looks like a comet. It behaves like a comet. All the evidence points that it's a comet. Over and over. Comet, comet, comet. Come on. The discussion of the anomalies, no addressing the unusual properties, just reassurance that this is a familiar, natural, nothing to see here. This is a comet. So, what are all the anomalies NASA didn't mention? See, Loeb has cataloged about a dozen, but here are the big ones. See, most comets can break apart when they get close to the sun. 3i Atlas passed within 130 million miles. It heated up to thousands of degrees and came out the other side as a single solid body. That's unusual. The anti-tail. Multiple observations, including the Hubble image from July and amateur astronomer photos from October, show jets of material pointing towards the sun, not away from it. That's backwards. Comet tails normally get pushed away by solar radiation pressures, an anti-tail pointing sunward. That's weird. Even the new HiRISE image, as fuzzy as it is, shows fuzz elongated in the direction of motion, not the direction of the sun. And then we have the composition. James Webb Space Telescope found massive amounts of carbon dioxide and carbon monoxide, way more than typical solar system comets. The CO2 to water ratio has never been before observed in a comet, according to the researchers. Its surface shows signs of being chemically transformed by billions of years of cosmic radiation, which is absolutely, possible, but once again, it should be talked about. We saw the early signs of outgassing. It started emitting gas when it was 955 million kilometers away, before it even got close to the sun. That's unusual. The trajectory, we talked about that. It came from the direction of the galactic center, and Loeb noted as it passed by the sun, we're not going to be able to observe it from Earth. If you wanted to use the sun's gravity for a course correction, that would be the perfect time to do it. Now, do all these anomalies prove it's something artificial? No. I mean, Loeb himself says, they don't. But they're all interesting, and they all warrant discussion. They're the reason NASA held the press conference in the first place. And NASA addressed none of them. Instead, they said, we were quick to say, yep, it definitely behaves like a comet. We certainly haven't seen any technical signatures of anything that would lead us to believe that it's anything other than a comet. And Avi Loeb's response? He titled his blog post, "There is nothing more deceptive than an obvious fact," which is a Sherlock Holmes quote. He wrote, NASA should have emphasized what we do not understand about 3I Atlas, rather than insist that it is a familiar comet from a new birth environment. He called the press conference a mistake, said it didn't prove significant new information, said they downplayed the mysteries instead of exploring them. And here's what stuck with me. Why hold a press conference in the first place? Why do they feel they need to reassure people it's nothing unusual? Now, here's where things get a little messy, because the same week NASA is holding this press conference to insist everything's normal, a new documentary drops on Amazon Prime claiming the U.S. government has been hiding evidence of alien contact for 80 years. It's called The Age of Disclosure. It was directed by Dan Farrow, who produced Ready Player One. I love that movie. It was filmed in secret over 3 years to protect the identities of sources. And they said that they did this because there's protection in numbers. Okay, and it makes sense. It featured 34 U.S. government officials, current and former, from military, intelligence, and defense. And it also included people like Marco Rubio, who's now the Secretary of State. It was really well done. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I bought it the other day. I think it was like $25 on Prime. And, once again, was there anything earth shattering? No, but it really gave you a lot of the backstory, which really, really was important. And here's what they claim. The U.S. has been recovering UAPs, unidentified anomalous phenomena, since at least 1947. And there's a classified program called Legacy, dedicated to reverse engineering non-human technology. Multiple nations are racing to crack alien tech in what one official calls the Manhattan Project on steroids. Recovered craft defy all known physics. Transmedium vehicles operating in space, air, and water with no visual propulsion. They actually show videos of this where an object goes from the air right into the ocean and it never loses speed and then comes out. It's just physically not possible by anything that we know of. They say that there's biological specimens, non-human beings, and they've been recovered and studied. The information is compartmentalized beyond presidential oversight. Even the president might not have access. Jay Stratton, former director of the government's UAP task force, says on camera, "I have seen with my own eyes non-human craft and non-human beings." Now, the problem is the same as with NASA. There's no physical evidence. Everything's compelling, the clearest videos, the lab results, the recovered materials. However, it's all classified. We're left with testimony from credible people making incredible claims. And the critics are brutal. The New York Times said anyone who sits through its nearly 2 hours of unprovable claims is a chump. Scientists say, show us the evidence or stop making claims. But here's what's interesting. The documentary was filmed in secrecy. Sources feared retaliation. Some wouldn't go on camera. That tells you something about the culture around this topic, whether the claims are true or not. And some of the things that they explained, listen, if you give out this restricted information that's considered classified, it's actually punishable by death. Okay? Like, if that's you, are you taking that risk? I mean, probably not. And when you put NASA's defensive press conference next to this documentary allegations, you start to see a pattern. So basically, like when something unusual shows up, there are two responses. Response one, is scientific curiosity. Scientists see anomalies, they catalog them. They try to understand what they don't know. Avi Loeb says, let's consider all possibilities, including uncomfortable ones. And then you have response two, unofficial reassurance. Government agencies, whether NASA or the Defense Department, focus on downplaying mysteries. Nothing to see here. Everything is normal. Trust us. And when those two responses clashed, it creates a trust problem. Because here's the thing. Maybe NASA's right. Maybe 3I Atlas is just a weird comet. Natural objects can be strange. The universe is full of surprises. The anomalies might have perfectly ordinary explanations we just haven't figured out yet. But when NASA won't even acknowledge the anomalies exist, when they hold a press conference just to say Comet 20 times, that doesn't build trust. That just erodes it. And then people start asking, well, what else aren't you telling me? That's how you get documentaries like The Age of Disclosure. That's how you get millions of people believing the government is hiding alien contact, because the government acts like they're hiding something. Even if they're not, we don't know. Now, I've spent 20 years working in government IT. I know how these organizations work. Complexity in itself hides things. Information gets siloed. Sometimes it's not conspiracy. It's just the bureaucracy of how things are structured. People in one department generally don't know what's happening in another. But opacity breeds suspicion. When NASA holds images for 45 days, then release blurry photos while insisting there's nothing unusual, that looks like a cover-up, whether it is or not. When defense officials testify to Congress about UAP encounters, but can't show classified evidence, that looks like they're hiding something, whether they are or not. And suddenly, the conversation isn't about what's true, it's about who do we believe. Look, I don't have a smoking gun here. I'm not claiming 3I Atlas is an alien probe. I'm not saying the Age of Disclosure proves government conspiracy. What I'm saying is, the way information is handled matters. If NASA wants scientists and the public to trust their conclusions, they need to engage with the mysteries, not dismiss them. Avi Loeb isn't a crackpot. He's the former chief of Harvard's astronomy department. I mean, he's probably one of the smartest guys on the planet. And when he says these anomalies need explanation, that deserves a response beyond, it's definitely a comet, trust us. If the government wants people to stop believing in UAP cover-ups, they need transparency, declassify the data, let independent scientists analyze it, because we have evidence, but we can't show you it doesn't work anymore. It hasn't worked for decades. And here's what I want to see from NASA. Acknowledge what you don't understand. Say, here's what we know. Here's what puzzles us. And here's how interesting it is. And here's how we're investigating it. That builds trust. If these UAP programs exist and there's recoverable evidence, show us. If they don't exist and the officials are mistaken, explain how 34 people with security clearances all got the same story wrong. And from everyone else, stop treating this as a tribal warfare between believers and debunkers. There's a middle ground where we can ask the hard questions, demand evidence, and stay open to surprising answers. Because the universe is big, really big. We've only been seriously looking for the last few decades, and we found exactly 3 confirmed interstellar objects. 3. If one of them turns out to be something extraordinary, that's not crazy, that's statistics. But we'll only know the truth if we're willing to look honestly at the data. All of it, not just parts of it, and not just the parts that fit our narrative. 3i Atlas is still out there. It makes its closest approach to Earth in December on the 19th. It's just a few weeks away, just before Christmas. Hubble and James Webb will get new observations. Ground telescopes are tracking it. We have amateur, astronomers out there. They're obviously looking, and obviously they're going to speak the truth. So maybe it'll turn out to be exactly what NASA says. It's a comet. It's just a comet. Or maybe Avi Loeb will be proven right, and we'll have to expand our understandings of what's possible. And either way, I'll be watching and questioning, because that's the only honest place to be. So, if you enjoyed this episode, please give me a like. If you're enjoying this type of content, you can always subscribe to the channel. I'd really appreciate that. And once again, thank you for joining Thriving in Ambiguity with Steve Mancini. Thanks for listening.